I would listen to Bill Gates, not because he made a great fortune, but because he figured out how to give it away in an intelligent way. I mean, he's given it all away. And Warren Buffett decided to give all his away in an incredible act, by the way, of the absence of ego, something we're not very good about in the West that our friends in the East can talk to us about. Buffett is going to give 90-some% of his fortune away by giving it to Gates and letting Gates decide how to spend it. No buildings with his name on the wall. No employees with their business cards that have Warren Buffett's name on it. Why? Because Bill Gates and his wife decided that everybody in the world deserved the same chance that he had had, and that the rest of the world had nowhere near those chances. But he was not going to be a fool in giving his money away. He was going to try to work and work and work until he found out what would work to make chances in life more equal, both within his own country and across the world. I do an enormous amount of work, mostly in healthcare, and mostly in Africa with the Gates Foundation. And I love every minute I ever spend with Bill Gates because he'll tell me something I haven't thought about. And so if the future of the world hinged on it, I'd want to talk to him. I have many candidates for the other things, but I want to show you something here. This is my fifth choice. Of all there are many people, including Al Gore, who have written several profoundly important works about climate change. But I recommend this book. It just came out. It's called The Social Conquest of Earth by Edward O. Wilson, who is almost 90 now. This will almost certainly be the last book he wrote. He won 2 Nobel Prizes for books about ants. And yet you will never read a book that makes a more profound case for sustainability. He talks about the history of humanity, how we got to be where we are, why we're good at cooperating, and how we came to dominate the earth, and how the only cooperators that are better than us are almost robotic: ants, termites, and bees. But why, because of our very creativity, because our brains are big, we are prone to arrogance and always flirting with destroying that which we have created. He explains why at 4 or 5 or 6 critical junctures in pre-human history, if the development of life had taken this turn or that, we might never have even come into being as a species. And now all these wonderful things are happening, and we continue to put at risk everything we've achieved because we do not understand that we don't know everything. We have fundamental obligations to the natural habitat which gave us birth. It's a fabulous, fabulous book. And now my 6th candidate, first of all, if we had any sense and we really knew anything about everybody that ever lived, 2/3 of the people on this list would be women, because they care more about preserving kids than men do. Most of the time. We all say we do, but we don't. But my 6th candidate would be the women of Rwanda. In 1994, in 100 days, 10% of the country was killed. 800,000 people, almost all of them with machetes. Not some nice clinical big bomb or some super efficient gas chamber. People going from village to village, cutting each other to pieces. So the war was ended when Paul Kagame, now the president, came in out of the bush with his army and stopped the violence, and then the world rushed in too late, including me, one of the great regrets of my life. And we helped them end the violence, clean it up, save the lives, and start again. But they know something about life that is critical to sustainability. And I'll just tell you 2 stories. Well, Hillary and I went there in 1998, a year after we first came here. And I asked to meet with survivors of the genocide. So they got us 6 survivors of the genocide. They were all very impressive people. One guy, a real handsome guy, had his arm sliced off at the elbow, and he laughed and said he was still a one-armed man for peace. There was a nun who had sheltered people from the Tutsi ethnic group from being slaughtered. But the last woman appeared to have no marks on her body. And she was dressed in one of these beautiful, bright-colored dresses of the African lake country. Very elegant woman. And she said, "You see no marks on me because I was hacked across the back. My family was betrayed by our neighbors." And for those of you who don't remember, Rwanda is about 15% Tutsi, 85% Hutu, slightly less in both cases, about 3% Twa, Pygmy tribe. And the Hutus were basically whipped into a fervor thinking after the presidents of Rwanda and Burundi crashed in a plane that somehow there was this great threat against them. And boom, 100 days later it was over. So anyway, this woman said, "Our neighbors, our children played together. We celebrated the holidays together. But when they came to our village, they were so afraid they gave us up. And I was hacked across the back and left for dead, and I woke up in a pool of my own blood to see my husband and 6 children lying dead around me. And I screamed out to God in anger that I had been spared." And she said, "I realized I could not have been spared for something as mean as vengeance, so I do what I can to help us begin again." This woman established an orphanage for orphans of all ethnic groups and placed them in homes without regard to ethnic groups. And she said, "I try to redeem the love of my husband and children by saving these children. It's not their fault who their parents were or what their parents did." Okay, fast forward. About, I don't know, several years later, I was out of office, and I helped the Rwandans to finish their genocide memorial, which is one of the most moving things you'll ever see. In the hillside outside Kigali, there is a crypt in 3 floors cut into the mountain with simple concrete tops with flower gardens on them. And in that crypt there are the bones of 300,000 Rwandans, because they have no embalming. Their per capita income 4 years after the genocide was only $268 a year. So they come and enroll their loved ones in a roll of honor, and they put their bones there. And they finish this nice little museum which explains what happened. And this very handsome young Rwandan man was taking me through. He looked like he'd graduated from Harvard with a business degree. So he's clinically explaining what happened. And I said, "Did you lose anybody?" He was thanking me because I helped him build it. I helped him raise the money. I said, "Did you lose anybody?" He said, "Yes, my mother, my father, my brother, my sister-in-law." He said, "If you stop at my uncles, aunts, and first cousins, 73 people in my family were killed." And here's this guy, this national treasure in a poor country, this brilliant, handsome young man. God only knows how many others were like him in his family. And I said, "This must be very hard for you." He said, No, it's good." He said, "This is therapeutic. We have to learn and get over it and face the truth." And I said, "You remind me of this woman." So I told the story of the woman. And he smiled. He said, "Well, I should. She's my aunt." She said, "We both lost the same 73. But the point is, this woman helped free a country. I'll give you one last story. I used to buy Rwandan baskets and try to place them for all the people that helped me do my work around the world. And the most famous basket makers probably are a woman named Piskazi, who was a very tall, thin Tutsi woman who lost 7 of her 10 children and her husband in the genocide. The only reason the other 3 survived is that they were in the military, so they were off somewhere when all the machetes were going on. So here she is, a 50-year-old widow, 7 of her 10 kids dead. She has to begin again. So she goes and finds a Hutu woman who also was widowed and was a basket maker. And she said, "Look, we can't afford to hate each other. We have to begin again." So she started making baskets, and they were selling them on the side of the road. Pretty soon other women came in and were trained. They were selling them in Kigali. Pretty soon they're selling them in Macy's in New York City. And they're doing so well that young men come in and ask to be trained. So this one young man, 26-year-old young man, works for her for a whole year. And one day he asked if he could see Piscazzi, his boss. And he comes in to see her and he says, "You have been wonderful to me, and I am so grateful. But I cannot live with myself anymore. I murdered one of your children. I know you have 3 sons in the military. Send for one of them to come and kill me. It would be just. And I will work for you every day until he comes." And she looked at him and said, "What good would that do? I forgive you. Get up and go back to work." Could you do that? So, I say that when I say the remnant of Rwanda, I think sometimes we make a mistake looking for saviors. Our salvation is within ourselves. And it isn't about what happens to us, it's about what our attitude is. If we were thinking straight, none of us would knowingly destroy the planet. Nobody would. So we have to cook up in the face of all the evidence, all these crazy defenses, so we can continue our self-destructive behavior. And yet nothing elates us more than seeing a free spirit. We love Mandela because we're afraid that if we couldn't do it. We love those women because we're afraid we couldn't do it. But if we want to save the planet in our own way, we have to do it. Thank you.
De reunirnos a todos nosotros aquí también. De otra parte, este Grupo Nación agradece mucho su presencia esta noche acá. Los esperamos en el tercer foro. Que tengan muy buenas noches.